everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the How to Become a CFRE or How to Become a Certified Fundraising Executive EMEA presentation. And my name is Ashley Gatewood. I am the Communications and Marketing Director at CFRE International. And I'm based in Baltimore on the East Coast of the US, about an hour north of Washington, D.C. So that's where I'm coming to you from today. I have to warn you that there is a cat in my office that I cannot get to. It's under a piece of furniture. You probably see this cat tree, a little bit of it over my shoulder. So if there is a cat walking around my keyboard and I have to stop for a minute to remove him from the room, you will be warned. I'm very, very thrilled that today we have our UK CFRE ambassador with us, James Dyer. And James is based in Bristol. Previously, he was a development executive at the Oxford Philharmonic Orchestra, and currently he is a philanthropy consultant at the National Trust. So we are going to hear a bit from James later. He's going to share with us the benefits that he's experienced as a CFRE and his study tips. So with that, I will wrap up the housekeeping by saying we have a question pane. Feel free to type your questions in there as they come to you. I will stop periodically to answer questions, so don't hesitate to ask them. And we also have a chat box that hopefully you can see as well. And I would say if you would like to kick us off, feel free to type in the chat box which country you are joining us from today. And we had people from all over Europe, a number of people in Kenya register. So if you feel like it, maybe everybody's a little quiet after lunch, but if you want to tell us which country you're joining us from in the chat, feel free to do that. All right, so I will go ahead and dive on in. Our session is being recorded today, and you will get a link to this recording as well as a copy of the slides. All right, so firstly, what is the CFRE? And you may not have heard of us too much before, but we are the only globally recognized and accredited certification for fundraising professionals. And why does that matter? Well, it matters because no matter where you earn our certification, it translates across the globe. So if you become a CFRE in Berlin and then you take a job working in Morocco, right, your CFRE travels with you. It means the exact same thing no matter where in the world that you work. We are a certification that is demonstrating your understanding of ethical best practice fundraising. We all like to think everyone that works in a nonprofit is ethical. I personally worked in a nonprofit about 15 years ago where my coworker stole $1.5 to $4 million. It was, terrible. If you've ever worked someplace where something like that's happened, you know that it really does carry with you, and it is a scary feeling. So your donors, your board, your boss, right, all of these people want to know that you are committed and capable of ethical best practice fundraising. Currently, we have over 7,500 CFREs worldwide. So we have a growing population of folks, and I hope that you'll join us. So I'm going to launch a poll right now, and we are just asking if you have started a CFRE application. So if you want to tell us yes or no, if you have started your application. All right, and I will close the poll in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right, great. And let's look at the results together here. So it looks like a small number of people have started their application, but most people have not. All right, that's all good because we will show you briefly how to start your application. All right, and James, you're up. I have your first slide here on why you earned your CFRE. So if you would like to jump on in.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. Hi, everybody. It's really good to be here today, just sharing a little bit of my personal journey about CFRE, why it's been important to me, and why I decided to get my certification and how it's helped in my career, really, and progressing in all sorts of ways. So I think the one thing that, so I've been in fundraising for about 10 or 11 years now, and one of the things that I was aware of is that when I was applying for jobs, I had a music degree sitting at the top of my CV. So really, I was shopping around for an accreditation that would match my experience of working in fundraising and development, and so the CFRE was a perfect fit for that. And it's meant that my CV is far more balanced with an accreditation and a sort of certification that matches my experience. So that I think has been a real asset in my most recent sort of job application rounds. I went for a job with the National Trust about 2.5 years ago. It's been long-standing sort of passion of mine to work for them, and I'm pleased to have got a job now. But I went through a couple of rounds with them. First time I didn't have a CFRE. Second time I did. First time I was second choice. Second time I got the job. So I mean, in a really pragmatic sense, you know, it's helped me at least have the confidence to go into those interviews and really talk about my knowledge and have a certification that backs it up. It's really a great opportunity for personal growth. Oh, actually, right on it with the slides here. You know exactly what I'm about to say. So as I said, I've been working in fundraising for about 10 or 11 years now, and one of the things that I found really important is to stay connected with best practice and to stay connected with the sort of wider fundraising landscape, both in the UK and internationally. And having the opportunity to study and remind myself about best practice across the whole spectrum of sort of fundraising tasks. I mean, my roles my current roles in philanthropy, sort of major donors, but my previous roles have very much been full spectrum fundraising, and just having that opportunity to, I suppose, be reassured by my own knowledge of the subject has been really beneficial. And Ashley's already touched on the fact that CFRE is the only fundraising certification that's internationally recognised, and as part of my sort of longer term values, I'd love to spend some time working abroad, and it's a really good opportunity. It's a really good sort of stamp on my CV and on my my sort of record that will give me a sort of shoe in the door in the future. And also the existing networks that exist amongst certified CFRE fundraisers is super welcoming, and it means that I can just send someone on LinkedIn a little request if we've got those 4 little letters after our name, and it just means that we've already got a this is just an amazing network. It's been really fantastic. Actually, I'm going to hand back to you, or I could keep talking and waxing lyrically about my CFRE, but I think you've got another slide for me to talk to later on.
Well, thank you so much, James. That was excellent. I appreciate you sharing. So some of the reasons why people would become a CFRE are, and as James has pointed out a bit, is to reinforce your fundraising knowledge, right, and best practice. This process, and we'll talk about what that process is, but nobody knows everything about fundraising. And so this process will help you plug any holes in those gaps in knowledge that you have so that you can be a more confident, well-rounded fundraiser. And also it gives confidence to your senior leaders in your fundraising expertise, right? Because we all know, all of us have walked into a room at some point in our profession and had people sort of like, do you really know what you're talking about? Or second guess us, especially earlier in our careers. So the CFRE is really that proof in the pudding. It can also help you advance your career. This is to what James spoke about. It does really help you stand out with your CV during hiring. It is something, right, when people are hiring for a higher level position, they want full assurance that the person they're bringing onto the team is competent and knows their stuff, right? If you hire a crummy fundraising coordinator, that's no good, but it's not tragic. But if you hire a crummy director of development, then it's a world of hurt, right? It's not very good. I'm just going to respond to someone's question really quick in the typing here. All right, and our 4th reason that we have on here is strengthening the fundraising profession. We hear this in a lot of countries where people are CFREs, that people say, I became a CFRE because in my country, people don't take fundraising seriously as a profession, right? And maybe you've experienced that too before, where people are like, what's a fundraiser? Do you need a qualification? How did you get into this, right? And people don't always give it the gravitas that they should, but when you have a certification, you're showing that there is a global body of knowledge that you're working towards. So for all the folks in our poll who had not yet started an application, I'm going to show you where on our website you can do that. So if you go to our homepage, CFRE.org, we have 2 spots that you can click and get your application going. Now, I do want to point out that it is completely free to start your application. You are only going to pay if you decide that you want to submit it. So there's no financial obligation at all. If you just want to begin an application, start logging in, take a look around, see everything that it entails, you're completely able to do that. No problem. Now, our application is points-based, and we have 3 main sections. So I will go through each of those sections, and we'll break it down. Like I said, if you have a question, please feel free to let us know, and I will be happy to do my best to answer it. So the application works on a point system. Essentially, you need 80 points within the last 5 years in the education section. So almost everything we're looking at on the CFRE application is what you've done from now going back 5 years, okay? So in the education section, we have a fundraising education requirement. You can see this on your screen here, how we award points for this. So you earn 1 point per hour in a session. Super easy. You go on a 1-hour fundraising webinar, it's 1 point, right? You go to a conference that has 10 hours of fundraising presentations, 10 points. Right, super straightforward. If you ever present fundraising material, you will earn 2 points per hour. And if you are presenting new material for the first time, you're going to earn yourself 3 points per hour. If you're not up to presenting, that's totally fine. It's not required. It is just a way that you can earn those points a little more quickly. We also are allowed to take up to 10 points of non-fundraising education. And the thing that I need to remind you about here is that it needs to be relevant. We have people submit all kinds of crazy things. Yoga for fundraisers, a chocolate making course, things that sound really fun, but we just can't really draw a line between them and your ability to fundraise, right? So in the non-fundraising education, things that would count would be leadership courses, time management courses, let's say a business writing course, an Excel class, something like that, where we can say, okay, yep, this is going to have an effect on this person's job. Another way that you can earn education points is through any academic degrees that you may have. If you don't have an academic degree, that's completely fine. But if you do, it's just a way that you can get your points more quickly. We accept any year, any major. So if you have a bachelor's in French from 1996, that is 10 points. If you have a master's in computer science from 2009, that is 10 points. Any year, any major. So we said before, the application's looking back the last 5 years. The one difference on that, the one exception, is your academic degrees. So we have a maximum 40 points that we can take from academic degrees. If you have 14 PhDs, that's really cool, and I'm actually quite envious, but we can only take 4 of them, right, to qualify towards those 80 points. Another way that you can earn your points is through service learning, which is our term for volunteering. It is we award up to 10 points for this, and you can earn 1 point per year per org that you volunteer with. So if you're a volunteer and let's say every Saturday in September, you participate in a beach cleanup in your area, that's going to earn you 1 point per year that you do that. The volunteer activity doesn't have to run 52 weeks a year, because we know a lot of volunteer activities just don't, right? And if you serve on a committee or board of a nonprofit, you will earn yourself 2 points per year. So if you volunteer, that's great. If you don't have the time to volunteer, that's not a problem. But if you do volunteer, you can earn yourself up to 10 points for what you've done in the last 5 years. All right. Now, at this point of the presentation, a lot of times people think, well, there's tons of education types out there, Ashley. What exactly counts? So everything on your screen here will qualify towards those education points. And the one that I'm going to point out is the fourth bullet, the audio and video recordings of conferences. If you are trying to bank up a lot of points quickly, this might be something that you look for. If you register for a conference and they say, for 6 months afterwards, you will have the ability to access recordings, and you go through and you watch all the recordings for the sessions you didn't get a chance to attend in person or live, you can get all of those points. So that's something to keep an eye out for, right? Because if you want to get the most bang for your buck on points, that can be a really smart way to do that. And we've had a question come in, are volunteer opportunities only going back 5 years as well? Yes, they are. The volunteer opportunities we are looking at is to go back 5 years. Excellent question. Now, the one thing that trips people up a bit in this process is determining how many hours they were in fundraising instruction. So this is the number one error we see on applications. Let's say you go to a one-day conference and it runs from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. People look at that and go, okay, cool, it's an 8-hour conference. I'm going to get 8 points. But the thing is, we can only take points for the time that you were in fundraising instruction. So we've got to subtract out meals and breaks, networking time, drinks in the exhibit hall. If you missed a session, to triage a crisis on your phone in the foyer, that kind of thing, that would need to come out. So what we usually see for conferences is that you earn about 4.5 to 5.5 points per day. So just keep that in mind when you are tallying that. Now, I have a screenshot here that you can see of what an entry for a conference looks like inside our application. I've done this one for the IFC 2019 conference. So if you attended that, the information on here is all accurate to that. So you may want to jot it down. But that was worth 13.25 points, right? And so let's see here. You're going to see here that you're going to select fundraising education. But the next thing is a little not intuitive, is that where it says name of session, you're going to type in the name of the conference. So we don't need to know the name of every session at every conference you attended, right? Because that would just get really wild. Just make one entry for the conference, put the name of the conference for name of session, and we don't need the name of every presenter. Just type various in the presenter line, and that will be perfect. So, and like I said, this event was worth 13.25 education points. So if you did attend IFC 2019, this gives you an idea for how many points you could earn. All right, and so we are at our first question break. So feel free to type your questions into the question box. We have had one come in where someone is saying, I attended DMA, which is the Direct Marketing Association, a few times in the last 5 years. Is that okay for points given your requirements? So if the DMA conference is fundraising related, then all of the points are going to qualify if they happen in the last 5 years. If the DMA conference was more about general direct mail, I'm not sure what that agenda looked like for the years that you're referencing. But if it was non-fundraising related, then you would be able to take up to 10 points under non-fundraising education. So I hope that helps. All right, well, that I will keep on moving. But like I said, feel free to jump in with a question if you have one. All right, and now we are at our second poll. Let me go ahead and open this here. All right, we are asking, how long have you been professionally fundraising? So we have 0 to 3 years, 4 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 11 to 15 years, or more than 15 years. All right, and I will close this in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right, and then let's look at the results together. All right, so it looks like about a third of folks have been in fundraising for 4 to 5 years. All right, excellent. And then we've got a nice mix from our other years here. All right, now let me see why you all can't see my screen. All right, we're having some excitement here. If you can hang on just 1 second and I will see why the screen does not want to share properly. I think it's showing the wrong screen. Well, that's a good time. All right, let's see if we can sort this out. All right. And we're back. Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. So the next piece that we're going to talk about in the application is professional practice. This is you working. That's all it is. Super straightforward. Again, we're looking what you have done in the last 5 years. So in the last 5 years, you need to have worked at least 36 months in order to qualify. So on that poll that we did, everyone who has 4 years or more experience, if that all took place in the last 5 years, you are all set. If you have fewer than 3 years experience, that's actually not a problem because it's the perfect time to start your application. A lot of people will begin their application when they have fewer than 3 years experience and just keep working towards the education requirement until they hit 3 years, and then they can hit submit and be ready to roll. 1 month equals 1 point, right? Super obvious. So 36 points equals 36 months that you've worked. And if you work full-time, at least 50% of your fundraising duties, at least 50% of your duties must be fundraising related, right? So if you wear the PR hat 50% of the time and you fundraise 50% of the time, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to do 100% fundraising day in, day out. Now, the third and final piece of the application I will talk about is professional performance. And you need to have earned 55 points within the last 5 years. And what that means is 1 point equals 25,000 US dollars. Often people will ask, well, why is this in US dollars? Because I'm in Europe or Africa, outside the US. And the reason is we are accredited. And our accrediting body has told us that we are only allowed to have one currency worldwide. So if you, I'm sure nobody in this call, right, is in the United States. If you're outside the US, we actually have a currency converter inside the application. So we'll make this easy peasy for you. So don't worry about getting into currency converter. We've got you covered inside the application. What this 55 points works out to be is 1.375 million US dollars. So essentially to have raised that in the last 5 years. But I want to point out, we know fundraising is a team sport, right? So let's say, for instance, you work someplace where you had a big fundraising gala and it brought in 600,000 euro. There's no way to say, well, Dietrich brought in 80,000 of that, and Molly brought in 14,000 of that, and Francoise brought in 28,000 of that, right? When you work on a team activity like that for fundraising, you don't really have a clear way to parse out who brought in what for that big total. So you will claim that whole amount as your points, right? So if you were on a fundraising event team and it brought in 600,000 euro, you were going to claim the full 600,000 euro for yourself, right? So this is going to, kind of banks up more quickly for people than they might think. And we've had a question come in. Somebody is joining us from the US. So yeah, 99% of this webinar is going to apply if you're in the US. For events, you're going to report gross, and secured grants also count. So a lot of people find that this 5-year going back for professional performance is something manageable, right? This isn't super, super difficult. However, we know people are in smaller shops, right? And you may raise far less than that. You are not shut out of this process. We have a way that you can earn those 55 points through communications and management projects, and we award 5 points per project. So I'm not going to get too far down the track about projects, but we have a lot of information on our website, including examples about that. So if you don't think you can meet the professional performance amount on funds raised, relax, it's cool. We have the ability for you to meet that requirement via projects. This is my hot tip I have two hot tips actually in this presentation, and this is the first one. This is about storing documentation. So we've talked about how the points work for education, right? You earn 1 point per hour for attending. What we highly recommend is that you keep some kind of documentation for what you attend. So let's say you register for a webinar, keep the registration confirmation email. You go to a conference, keep the PDF of the agenda, keep all of that stuff. It's always smart to log your education as soon as you attend it, right? Because it's really difficult, let's say in December, to go, what's all the webinars I went to this year? What are all the conferences I attended, right? It's really hard to do that. So if you update your application a little bit at a time and you store your documentation so you can check like, okay, this conference, I really did do 11 hours of instruction and I have the PDF agenda right here. We highly recommend that you do this. However, be sure that you store all of these things in a place you can always access them. So if you're going to store soft copies, keep everything in your personal email. It is probably the #1 reason people call us crying. They say, oh my gosh, I just switched jobs and I realized all of my CFRE proof is in my old work email and I can't access it, right? So keep a folder called CFRE proof in your Gmail or whatever your personal email is. Just keep sending everything there and you won't have to worry about it. Hard copies, store them at home. Don't store them in your office. All right. Now, how much does the CFRE cost? So I do want to start by saying that with any certification, right, it is an investment in yourself. It is money that you are spending that will come back to you manyfold over the course of your career, right? So like James said, when he had his second time interviewing with the National Trust and he was a CFRE, he landed the job, right? So for initial certification, the cost is $700 US, and many people do have their employer cover part or all of this cost. If you are not a member of a participating organization, the cost is $875 US, and you only pay at the time that you want to submit your application. So even if you're on the fence about CFRE, I recommend that you begin your application just so you can start logging all of your education points. Another thing about your CFRE application is that if you're logging all of your education in there, it is awesome to use that for your annual review at your job, right? Because let's say your annual review happens in December and your boss says, well, what education have you done? You have it all living inside your CFRE application, right? So you can go and use that as a great tool to keep all of your learning tracked in one place. So you're probably thinking, okay, you just said this term participating organization, but exactly what does that mean? So we have agreements with a number of fundraising associations around the world. And the ones that are in the EMEA region are the Association of Fundraising Consultants in the UK, the Kenyan Association of Fundraising Professionals. And we've had 2 CFREs from Kenya in the last year, which is just fabulous to see. And the European Fundraising Association. So if you know the European Fundraising Association, EFA, they have all of these you see on your screen here. They have 19 different European countries as their members. So let's say you're a member of the Chartered Institute of Fundraising in the UK. You will get the EFA discount. You will get a 20% discount. So if you're a member of any organization that's currently on your screen, you are going to be eligible to get that 20% discount and pay the $700 US rate. So what do you get for that? Great. Well, one is we review your application. If there's an error and we need to send it back to you, that's totally not going to cost you any money, right? So if we have to send it back, there's no cost for you to resubmit. It also includes a digital badge, which maybe you've seen people on LinkedIn with these. They're really popular. Once you become a CFRE, we send you this digital badge and you can put it on your LinkedIn and Twitter profiles. The fee also includes all testing fees. when it comes time for you to test, you will not be asked to pay anything separate. It's a one and done. You're not going to pay anything at the testing phase. And the printing and mailing of your certificates. So we print and mail all of our certificates from just outside Washington, D.C., and mailing that to you, that whole thing, that is included in the cost. All right, so we've come to our second question break, and we have a couple of questions that have come in. So one is, which Canadian participating organizations are there? So there's the Canadian Association of Gift Planners and the Association of Fundraising Professionals. We have a page on our website in the About section that lists all, I think it's about 28 participating organizations. So if you're looking for one in particular, feel free to check that page out. If your work plans a development day and it's essentially a conference put on by your work with 8 presenters, would that count towards education? So typically that does not count towards education. It cannot be something that you do for your job, right? So like when we looked at, you earn 2 points per hour presenting. If you present internally to, let's say, your board about how to write thank you notes, or you have some kind of internal work conference, that does not qualify. What we need to see is that it's something outside of your job description. Another question is, would all webinars given by the Association of Donor Relations Professionals count for CFRE education? So if it's fundraising related, yes. If it's just a mix and mingle or, something like that, then it might only, that's not going to count, right? A mix and mingle won't count. But let's say they do a webinar on career progression in the fundraising field, right? Even though that's not fundraising per se, bringing in money per se, you could use that towards your 10 non-fundraising points. So I hope that makes sense. Another question is, the CFRE track for those who are solely gift officers, or is it good for those of us in development operations and oversee the administrative database and overall logistic aspects of fundraising? So yes, it's not for gift officers. It's for anyone working in development or fundraising. And the next and final question we have is, there study materials or costs for the test? Can one expect from the test? That's an excellent question, and we are going to talk about all things test related in the next few slides. So I will jump into that. The CFRE exam, whenever I talk about this in person, I say, if you're afraid of taking the exam, raise your hand, and usually about 90% of the hands in the room go up. And it is my hope and goal today that you will not feel nervous about the exam. We're going to go through a lot of what you need to know. We offer it 4 times a year, and you can see on your screen here the 4 test windows. And this is really, really important that you are aware of how these work. So we offer the test during these 4 windows. We do not offer it in December because it's just too crazy a time of year for people to be sitting for exams. The application deadline is the first day of a test window. So super easy, right? If you want to sit for the exam in the January 15th to March 15th test window, your application must be in by January 15th, right? That's all there is to it. I don't recommend that you submit your application on January 15th and want to sit for the exam January 17th, because we are going to need time to review your application and send you the instructions for scheduling your exam. So just, leave yourself a few weeks. You will commit to the test window before you submit your application. So choose wisely. There is a $35 US $35 fee to change your test window. And that's because we don't want people pushing it back indefinitely, right? If you become ill with COVID and you cannot take your exam when you said that you would be able to, we totally understand, and that $35 US fee will be waived. So don't worry about that. And you have up to 1 year to sit for the exam after your application is approved. So as long as it's within a test window, right? So if your application gets approved on December 20th, what you're actually going to have is until November 30th the next year to sit for the exam. Okay, so up to 1 year. We give you plenty of study time. The exam covers the 6 knowledge domains you see here. and I gotta keep myself honest here. I think it's relationship building is the one that people had the most trouble with last year. So highly, highly recommend that you study relationship building and securing the gift. Together, they make up 49% of this exam. So definitely ensure that you study well there. Those 6 knowledge domains are very broad, right? So we've broken them down into the nitty gritty of what you need to know for each domain in our test content outline. This is available on our website. So my recommendation is print it off, grab your highlighter, and then highlight every bullet point that you don't feel confident you could answer a test question on. And that's going to show you where you need to study, right? Because you don't want to spend time studying things you already know really well. We have a resource reading list, and these are the books our exam committee has identified as being able to help you prepare well for the exam. The resource reading list has 14 books on it, and before you have a heart attack, you only need to read 1 to 3, right? Just pick the books that apply to the areas you need to brush up on. We don't expect anyone to read 14 books. I'm a really frugal person. If you're also a frugal person, you may want to think about borrowing the books from new CFREs or your library. You may want to request that your employer purchase the books. This is a very common thing people do. If their employer doesn't want to put money towards the application fee, people will say, well, hey, would you buy these 2 books for me? And employers have been pretty receptive to that, actually. If you form or join a study group, you may want to divide and conquer with them who pays for what books. So I told you I had 2 hot tips in this webinar, and this is hot tip numero dos. So if you look at your screen here, this is a screenshot from Amazon UK. I know that this is also available on the Amazon France website. If you look at this book, it's called Achieving Excellence in Fundraising 4th edition, and this is a comprehensive text from our resource reading list. This is probably the most popular text that people use to study. And on Amazon, it's often free as an audiobook with an Audible account trial. So if you don't have an Audible account yet, you can get this audiobook at no cost. Some other resources for the exam, we have a practice exam on our website. Completely up to you whether or not you want to use it. You do not have to use it by any means, but it's there if you want it. It has a bank of 100 questions, and we recommend you take the exam. It's the practice exam. It's going to show you everything you got wrong, so you'll know what to study to. And then after you've studied, take the practice exam again to make sure that you have covered all of the gaps in knowledge you had. That is $59.95 US for a 30-day subscription, unlimited use, right? And $99.95 US for a 90-day subscription. And so now James is going to rejoin us and tell us a little bit about how he studied. So James, welcome back. Oh, look at that. Perfect. You got the book right there.
Ashley, I think you've been taking the words out of my mouth. This book is great. And it's so great that I keep it next to my desk and I reference it quite a lot just in my day-to-day work. So it's not money that's lost just as a test resource. It's really great for your professional career as well. So just to sort of augment what Ashley said, as somebody who has been through the process, I sat my CFRE exam at the beginning of 2020, about a week before lockdown in the UK, so sort of mid-March. And when I was first, I was thinking about doing a CFRE for quite a few years, and I actually reached out to I can't remember if I reached out to Ashley or I reached out to a contact with CFRE, and they put me in touch with a CFRE ambassador. That's me in the UK. So first port of call I would say is if this is something that you're serious about and would like to sort of start thinking about how you're going to study for this. reach out to me, and I'm happy for Ashley to share my contact details, and I can just give you a little bit of an overview about and a bit of one-to-one time. I'm happy to do that. So I spoke to the UK ambassador at the time, and we had a really great chat. And he recommended course text, and he gave me some of his notes, and he lent me a couple of other resources which were really useful. I also was able to sort of quiz him on a one-to-one basis about what the process of examination was. Yeah, next stage, this. I would say you probably would struggle with just the audiobook, but it sounds great to sort of send you to sleep at night to listen to the odd chapter. So this course is really comprehensive on and covers all of the 6 areas that the exam goes into in detail, and it's for those who might have some worries about the fact that the exam is focused on a sort of American model. It isn't. It's very, very universal, but it's good to just look at this book from a point of view of best practice and just the way in which the thinking is perhaps quite methodical. It's good for that. And I would recommend the mock exam. I appreciate it's another cost, but when you feel like you've studied to the level that you feel ready to take the exam, just getting 30 days of access for that, what was it, $59, is a real reassurance, not least because it means that you're really comfortable and familiar with the process of the examination when you get to it. I'm sure Ashley will, I'm just looking at the slides, perhaps go into detail about the actual pragmatic and practical side of the exam, but it is multiple choice. I sat it in a test centre, although I think I understand that it's now possible to sit at home. So I think that it's just good to know exactly what you're going to expect. So I would recommend that mock exam. There's probably not a lot else for me to say other than there is a very active CFRE Facebook group, which has a lot of sort of people sharing tips and I think actually also sharing former textbooks and that sort of thing if you'd like to see if you can borrow one. I didn't form part of a CFRE study group whilst I was sitting it, so that's not essential at all, but it's good to know that there are other people out there going through the same process as you, and you can share their successes when we all get accredited. Ashley, I'll pass back to you now, but I will stay on video for the questions at the end.
Perfect. Thank you so much, James. I appreciate it.
No problem at all.
It's always good to know how other people approach studying for the exam. All right, so what is the exam like? As James said, it's global. I think there's this misconception that it's American because our office happens to be based in America, but as I always say, our office has to be based in a country somewhere. So, you know, my husband's from New Zealand. I always say if our office was based in New Zealand, when people say we are too Kiwi, I don't know. But anyway, it is well and truly a global exam. Our exam committee is made up of people from all over the world. It is fully computer-based, and there are no country-specific questions. We're not going to ask you about, you know, gift aid in the UK or about donation receipts in France, right? It's not that kind of an exam. It's about ethical best practice fundraising. It's written at that 5-year practice level. So if you have 5 or more years in fundraising, it's probably, you know, you're going to come to it with a really awesome background. But we saw as well that you only need to have 3 years experience to be eligible to sit the exam, right? So if you have fewer than 5 years, we do recommend that you study more, and I'll talk about that down the line. It's 200 multiple choice questions, which is really cool because that means the correct answer is staring back at you. It's right there. You just need to select it. There are 4 options per question, and we are looking for the best answer with the best practice. This is really important to keep in mind because we all know that none of us work in an organization that's perfect. So what might be happening at your organization may not, the way you operate, right, may not be fully best practice. You may do something because you have an old school manager that says you have to do something this way, or a cranky board member that says you have to do something another way. When you're answering, if you answer for the best practice and not just how you would do it in your organization, right, that is a good thought to keep in the back of your mind, right? Now, You will have 4 hours to sit this exam, but my good news for you is that it is not a 4-hour exam. So what I mean by that is last year, in the data that we got back from our test center partner, the average length of time it took people to take this exam was 2 hours and 45 minutes. So don't think you're going to be there for the 4 hours. Every question ties back to something on the test content outline. Nothing is going to jump out at you from left field and feel foreign if you have done a thorough job of going through that test content outline. You can also move backwards and forwards inside the exam, which is great, right? Because if you finish with an hour to spare, you can go back and check all of your work if you want. If you get really hung up on question 14, but question 150 jogs your memory about it, you can go back to question 14, right? So you can move backwards and forwards freely inside the exam. The score range is 200 to 800, and 500 is the passing score. So if you get a 498, unfortunately, that is not passing. If you call our office and you ask, if there's anything we can do to help out, we cannot. We're accredited, so that 500 score is firm. And there's more information about how we score the exam on our website. But now I'd like to head over to our sample question. So this question does not appear on the live exam, but it will give you a flavor for how these questions look. The question asks, when a donor wishes to make a planned gift/bequest to the endowment fund, the fundraising officer should first, 1, offer to contact the donor's financial organization and advisor. 2, explore what the donor wishes to accomplish with the gift. 3, identify and share with the donor the organization's future needs. 4, introduce the donor to various planned giving options. So I'll give everyone a few seconds to mull that over. All right, everybody got their answer? And the correct answer is number 2, explore what the donor wishes to accomplish with the gift, right? Because you don't want to start steering the donor towards what you want them to put their money towards. You want the donor to be upfront with you about what they are looking to achieve. As James said, we have 2 options to take your CFRE exam. One is from your home or office with a product called OnView, and the other is in person at a test center, which these are run by a company called Pearson VUE. It's the same company that does the at home and in person. We had people clamoring in 2020 for an at home option, completely understandably, right? What we are hearing is that people really, really do not like the at-home option. And the reason for this is people think that they are going to be more relaxed at home, but people are finding they're actually a lot more distracted at home. There are some really tight security measures in place, regardless of where you take the exam. But if you take it at home, it is even more stringent. So for instance, if you go to the test center and you want to use the restroom, you can get up and use the restroom. The clock will keep ticking, but you can do it. If you are at home, you are not allowed to leave the room under any circumstance. So they don't want you to have a textbook hidden in the bathroom, right? That kind of thing. So you will have to stay in front of your webcam the entire time that you take the exam if you do it from home. Now, the in-person test centers, Pearson VUE, they are everywhere. They have thousands and thousands of locations worldwide. And to find the test center closest to you, you can go to this URL on your screen, pearsonvue.com/CFRE. I have typed in in for London into here, and it populates on the left side all of the locations, and then it also shows you a map with where those locations are. So have a look and you will likely find a test center not that far from you. Obviously, if you don't want to travel, you have the at-home option. And there's no cost differential, right? So whether you take it at home or you take it at the test center, it's the exact same cost. Once you finish your exam, a few things happen. Within one business day, you get a confirmation email from us saying, hey, we got your exam results. Within 48 hours, it's usually within 12 hours, but it can be up to 48 hours, you will have your score emailed to you. Within 1 week, we will email you the digital badge that we talked about earlier. And within 1 month, we will mail your certificate. We mail the certificates monthly in batches. I have to applaud this group on the call today. No one has yet asked me what happens if you don't pass the exam. Sometimes people ask me that on the third slide. And I always say, if you haven't even started your application, do not start thinking negatively about the exam, right? So if you are unsuccessful in the exam, you will have to wait 30 days before you can take it again. We have a US $375 retake fee. And so on at a conference I went to in the pre-times, some guy ran up to me at the exhibit booth and said, I have to pay $700 for the application, and then your retake fee is $375, and this is just way too much money. And I said, we don't want you to retake the exam. Don't factor this retake fee into your CFRE experience. The fee is high because we want you to study properly, right? You want to become a CFRE the first time. We want you to become a CFRE the first time. There's a maximum of 3 attempts on one application. I've only heard of this happening twice in almost 4 years I've been here, so it's pretty rare. And study thoroughly the first time. One time I was at a conference and a lady ran up to me. You'll notice a theme here, right? People running up to me at conferences and said, I have failed your exam 3 times. And I said, can you tell me about how you studied? And she said, I didn't study. I don't have time for that. So if you don't study, do not expect a good outcome, right? You are going to need to study. Now, once you become a CFRE, we do have recertification. This is to keep your skills sharp. This is to ensure that you continue to raise funds and that you stay employed in this profession. It's every 3 years and there's no exam. So once you pass our exam, you are golden, right? As long as you don't lapse, you never take that exam again. The rate if you are a participating organization member is $408 US, and it's $510 US at the regular rate. And the application is fully online. So it's a very straightforward process. You can see on your screen here the points for recertification. 30 points is professional practice. So that means that in that 3-year period, you need to work 30 months. If you're on medical leave, maternity leave, something like that comes up, right, you can't control, just contact us. We don't want to see, somebody lose their CFRE because they're on medical leave, and nobody's going to lose it because they're on maternity leave. And then I'll draw your attention to the 45 points in continuing education. Really, really achievable, right? We're looking at 15 points per year. So if you go to, let's say, 1 conference annually and you do several webinars, you will likely find that that is within your reach. I also want to point out that free fundraising webinars count too. And there has never been more free fundraising education online than there is now. So if you're looking at the CFRE process now, you probably actually have it easier than people from 5 years ago, right? Because so much is online. So for next steps, and we are going to have a quick Q&A after this, start your application at CFRE.org, even if you're weighing it up. Just start logging your information and the education you attend. Today, this presentation is worth 1 point in non-fundraising education. So you have 1 point right there. Go ahead and log it after this so you don't lose it. And just keep tracking those education points as you earn them. All right, so we've got a few minutes left. You'll see the succeed@cfre.org email address on your screen. This is our certification team. If you have any questions that I don't get to today, or a question crops up after today's presentation, feel free to email them and they will be happy to assist you. Also, feel free, we're very lucky we have James here, so feel free to pick his brain. If you have a question specifically for James, just type it in the question pane too, and we'll make sure James gets that question. So the first question is there any flexibility to submit for the current testing window? The current test window, October 1 to November 30th, is in process. So if you submit your application now, the soonest you can sit for your exam is January 15th of next year. So because this test window is underway, we cannot review, approve, and then have you sit the exam in this current test window. And then on the topic of testing at home, a question has come in. How are they monitoring at home what you are looking at, even if on webcam? So your webcam, what they're going to make you do when you start is take your laptop and show all around the room, right? Show the ceiling, show the walls, under the desk, under the chair, to make sure that you don't have notes hidden anywhere. You cannot have a water bottle or any beverages either when you're at home, because if you spill something on your keyboard and you can't take your exam, that's not good. So they also don't permit that. So everything is on webcam. Now, let's say, for instance, for whatever reason, you go like this and you come fully off your webcam. The proctor on the other side will say something to you. So there is a proctor on the other side of the webcam that is monitoring, because we take the exam security super, super seriously. All right. All right, James, here is a question for you. How long did you study for?
Good question. When I was thinking about which testing window I would go for, I didn't pick the next one. I picked the one after that because I just thought that I didn't at that stage know how long it would take. Actually, I think that there's a sort of estimate of, is it 40 to 50 hours of study? Is that right?
Yeah, so we say 40 hours if you've been in fundraising for 5 years, and 80 hours if it's under 5 years.
Cool. So yeah, my sort of piece of advice would be to pick the next window after the first available, just because I mean, in my case, I hadn't studied intensively for quite a while, and I thought that it might take me a little while to get back into it. But when I was actually in the process and working through the course material, this one particularly, the chapters are really nicely laid out. So I was sort of doing a couple of chapters, a chapter a night, a couple of chapters every 3 or 4 days, and just, it was a sort of slow burn, but I felt like I had the time to do that. So that would be really, don't rush yourself is my sort of top tip, I think, in that respect. So in terms of actually how long it took me, I think I registered maybe in September, and I sat the exam in March. So 6 months, give or take.
Excellent. Thank you, James. Our next question asks, what do you bring with you to the live test center? So the live test center has extremely tight security as well. They may ask you to roll up your sleeves to check that nothing's there, turn out your pockets. We've heard some instances where they've asked people to remove their glasses and they check that they don't have Google Glass. So you really can't bring anything into the test center room. I think almost all of them have lockers. So you would leave your phone, your wallet, your keys, right? Everything in there. A lot of people just opt, obviously not your keys, but to leave everything in their car is really common. In the test center, there is a water cooler. So you will be able to have access to water during that, which is unlike when you sit at home. All right, great. Well, that was our final question. So I'd like to thank James so much for joining us today, and everybody who was on the line.